All right. At this point, we have now reviewed the getting started, the report generation for non-setup machines, and now we're going to actually get into setup. This is the meat and potatoes of what Senteon is known for and how we're going to actually make a difference instead of just telling you about the issue. So I'm going to follow best practice here. And best practice is to first go to settings to set up your baseline primers. So baseline primers are going to be all of the choices of configurations that learning mode isn't so helpful with. These are some very much behavior oriented company culture type of choices that I need a real admin, a real human to tell Senteon what is best practice and what they can handle. So in this example, I'll go ahead and do a Windows Workstation domain member, but it's important to note that CIS has different recommendations on per OS version type. So if you are onboarding a mixture environment, then you will need to do the process I'm showing you more than once, but it is only once per profile, and it will save your results to edit later and set up however you want later. You can also have different variations, but regardless, what I'm showing today is a one-time process per version type. So going into this, I will go ahead and hit Manage Default. And you'll see here, well, you'll see if this is your first time setup, none of these check marks. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the first access button, and I'm going to review usability first. So looking just at usability, when you first come in here, all of these will already be set to Senteon recommendation. So if you're just trying to meet CIS and you're okay with everything, all you got to do is hit next from this screen. But again, showing usability, we can select all these policies and change them to the Microsoft default, and you'll see how the target option and target compliance changes. Not only that, we can also tell Senteon to unmanage the policy. This means this policy is not part of scope, it's not important to my security posture or audit or whatever, and I do not want this in my reports. So we can simply unmanage. But again, we could put this right back to the recommendation by clicking Senteon recommendation. One additional point of functionality, if you ever come across a policy where you don't understand what it's saying, you can always click into the policy. Like, what are these complexity requirements? What does that mean? We will include the explanation straight as it comes from CIS so you can understand what those requirements are. That way you're making informed decisions. Taking everything one step further, the modify button over here allows you to do individual custom choices that are not recommended and not default. So let's say 14 is just a little too long, but I still want a password policy. So if I move my icon over, I should be able to click this. And let's say I want 10. I can type in 10, and then you'll see 10, because it's less than 14, will go to non-compliant. But if I change that to 18, this will update and let you know it's compliant. I will note it is best practice whenever you do choose a non-compliant choice to annotate your reasoning. So best practice is here to put reviewer, approver, date, reason. So that would just be best practice if you want to input all of that information. Your annotations will also be available via report generation. So once you have this customized, you can go ahead and hit Save Changes, and that will go ahead and keep all of the policies in place. So you can see now we have the first one to recommended, then a custom 10, and then back to recommended. And all we're going to do is go through these screens. If we want all of these to be hardened, they will be hardened by default, and so forth. All right, so once you're done with all of this, you will get to an area, which let me finish up some of these check marks and get this done so we can move on. All right, I got quite a bit to get done. But again, these are going to be set up for success. So we can hit recommended, recommended. Awesome. Those ones are already set up. And we're going to add these. All right. And now we're finished. So now that we're finished, these are going to save all of our choices, assuming we click the save button. And now we're ready to onboard a Windows domain workstation. that the OS that is. If we also want to onboard Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, we will need to do the same process again because there's going to be behavior related policies here. So you got to review these. If you're okay with the recommendation, all we got to do is hit next and we can move on. So you will need to set up every type of profile once because again, CIS has different recommendations per type of profile. So there you have it. Those are now set up with the baseline primers. Now, getting to the last step of real admin work to get your Senteon instance organized, we will need to create a global baseline. The management of Senteon is something like this. You have a global management, global baseline that can be linked to a tenant baseline, and then you can manage multiple tenant level baselines via the global in a single pane of glass. So you are able to do that at scale very quickly. That is to note, you can also still make tenant level changes at the tenant. This will not impact or cause issue with your global baseline connection. One step further than that, you are welcome to still have exception groups within your tenant. Exception groups are not even seen or associated with the global baseline at all. So those are always going to be safe and separated from the rest. So going into creating a global baseline, let's go ahead and do that now. So if I wanted to create a new domain workstation like we did before, we can hit create new. I prefer the naming scheme tier 0, tier 2, whatever you want to do. And then you can create this from an existing baseline if you've done this before, but typically you're going to hit create new. Clicking create new here, you are going to see all of the policies that we already answered for. If you remember, here's the 10 we just did, but it is going to save all of our work. Additionally, there's going to be a lot more settings in the box below it. These are all the policies that learning mode is going to determine if you can or cannot handle for you. And we'll be getting to that point in the next video. So no, it's recommended not to make any changes here until after learning mode. So when you're making your first baseline, leave this box how it is. You can see that's now complete. And that is now going to populate in tier 2. Now, if I hadn't already made a Chrome, I would do the same thing for Chrome. So I would just create another one for Chrome. And that concludes the admin work. Now, to actually get our machine set up, we'll go into tenants. And we'll go into tenants here. And you will note everything you ever need to do will populate in Action Center. This is where a human needs to get involved. So you can see here we have 3 items that are ready for initialization. This is an endpoint status alarm. This effectively is telling us that there's 3 machines that are not actively hardening settings. These are 3 machines still in setup. So I'm going to go ahead and click access here, change this profile to the this one's a standalone, so we'll keep it here. And we'll go ahead and harden these 3 boxes. So initialize means take the image we choose. And if you remember, we did make an image in the domain level. I'm in the standalone, so I'm going to use one of the standalone I made. And I'm just going to join it to hardened baseline. So at this point, all we've done is learning mode is completed. And we've now said learning mode, take all of that data and tell me what you think might break if I harden it to this custom image. And this custom image I hand selected here by hardened baseline. If I did not already have a baseline available at the tenant level, I would need to hit create new. So create new, I would need to give it a tenant level name. So tenant name. I can do a description, but this is where the linking begins. So I can link this to whatever one I want, and then I can add on whichever profiles I want if you have the appropriate subscription type with us. So very quickly, you could create and then add it to that, which I'll tell you what, I'll just go ahead and create a new one. So this is going to load up with all of our choices from the global baseline level already pre-filled because we linked it to the global. So very simply, I'm going to hit complete. And now we should see that new baseline populate in the table to my left. So you can see very easily the tenant name, and I'm ready to initialize. As a note, you are able to skip setup and delay activation. This will effectively put the machines in a pending state for you to skip learning mode and apply the policy. You can skip setup and activate, and this will simply skip learning mode again, but it will change the policy as well with that click. Best practice I recommend is always to click initialization and review the learning mode findings. All right. In the next video, we're going to review how to finalize these machines and go through finalization and review all of the different types of findings that Senteon may potentially find during your evaluation and your onboardings. So thank you for tuning in again. Looking forward to going into finalization in the next video. All right.